Hello everybody, just want to start out this video by thanking each and every one of you who do watch and support my videos, as well as those who subscribe to my channel. I love you all and I want you all to know that I try my best to create solid content to the best of my capabilities, and I am always open to feedback as I want to improve and learn. With that said, welcome to another episode of Roguespirit Reviews, and today I will be reviewing Resident Evil 8 Village. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't, as I upload great and very informative video game reviews and content every week or every second week, as I do sometimes become busy dealing with real life, which is another video game that I sometimes suck at, but somehow your boy manages. Also, give this video a thumbs up. I would say give it a fist bump, but you know, COVID restrictions and all, it's better to be safe than sorry. Anyways, go grab a soda pop and a snack, close the Pornhub tab, and join me on another episode of Roguespirit Reviews.
Come, child, warm yourself, he coaxed. So she clothed herself.
So it's finally here, the long-awaited sequel to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I've just recently gotten into the Resident Evil franchise, and I was never a day one Resident Evil fanboy, but after playing Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 7, I have been hooked. Now, what made me most excited about Resi 8 is that it reminded me a lot about Resident Evil 4 with this faster, all-out tense action-heavy gameplay instead of the more slower survival horror take that the series is known for. So I was very excited to hear that Resident Evil 8 would pay homage to Resident Evil 4 in that aspect. Well, enough chit-chat. Let's get to the old meat and potatoes of this review.
You'll be sliced to ribbons before you ever see the child.
Alright, let's do this, starting with the story. The story starts after at least a couple years after the Baker family incident, and Ethan Winters and his wife Mia now have a daughter named Rosemary Winters, and all of them are living happily ever after. However, because this is a video game, Mia and Ethan's romantic perfect family argument gets interrupted after a couple bullets, actually a lot of bullets, plug Mia, and then a fan favorite OG Resident Evil character named Chris Redfield shows up out of nowhere. Damn. How much money did Mia owe you, Chris? But yeah, so Chris kidnaps Ethan's baby daughter and takes Ethan in as a hostage. You then take control of Ethan Winters as a player and discover that the vehicle that was transporting you was attacked, and you eventually end up in another desolate, creepy-ass Resident Evil style village where everybody wants to either kill or eat you alive. Thus the name of the game, Village. Huh. After exploring for a bit and surviving an enemy onslaught attack, which feels like it will never end, much like Resident Evil 4 when you have to stay alive while the villagers try to hunt you down and kill you and chainsaw your balls in half. You then run into a couple of survivors who literally all just die within a couple minutes. But hey, that's Resident Evil. Right on. Ethan then decides to head to Castle Demetrius in hopes of finding his daughter's whereabouts, but unfortunately, like any other main character from this franchise, Ethan gets kidnapped and tortured by the four lords, who argue over who gets to decide poor Ethan's fate. After barely escaping alive, Ethan makes his way into Castle Demetrius and has to survive while being persuaded by Lady Demetrius herself, aka Big Mommy Triple D's, along with her four daughters who chase you in real time, who are bloodthirsty for some fresh man blood. After solving puzzles and fighting weird flying insect bat creatures, and eventually killing all of Lady Big Triple D's daughters, you eventually have to put down the internet's favorite vampire waifu and discover that Lady D just has one part of Ethan's daughter's remains, and it is explained by the Duke himself that you have to seek out all of the other remaining lords and find the rest of Rosemary's remains. So you go visit each of the four lords, and after killing them, all in the name of your daughter, as if you're Liam Neeson or something from the movie Taken. Actually, this game reminds me a lot about that movie for some reason. Same kind of story, no? Just kidding. Anyway, so yeah, you find all of the missing parts of Rosemary, and after some plot twists and turns, you eventually run into Mother Miranda, the main villain of this game, and then it is your task to save Ethan's daughter. The gameplay is overall the same from Resident Evil 7, and is pretty exhilarating and action heavy focused. Trust me, heads are gonna start popping with blood squirting all over the place. I think I got some in my mouth. Anyways, the first person immersion in this game is really pretty amazing and fascinating. You explore creepy, fun areas, loot some treasure, constantly looking at the map in order to find more treasure or backtrack to previously unexplorable areas thanks to having gained new key items the further you get into the game. But this is not an open world game. It still feels like Resident Evil, where the areas you visit in the game aren't completely open world, but this is a big enough world to explore and find some hidden goodies, although it can feel linear at times. I wish this game would have had more of an open world vibe to it, but not a big complaint. The other areas you do explore do look very detailed and very expertly crafted in my opinion. There are some great areas to explore in this game as well. The main highlights for me are when you are exploring the creepy eerie castle Demetrisk, which houses some weird vampire ladies which try to stalk and hunt you down, so you really do have to plan ahead on where you want to go and solve puzzles as you try to survive. Another favorite area late in the game is Heisenberg's factory, which had me confused as to where to go sometimes, and the robotic enemies that you have to run from and fight against really did surprise me in a good way, and I did appreciate the change of enemy variety here to keep the game feeling fresh, as I did get tired of fighting the same old lichens and zombies over and over again, which did indeed become stale, so yeah, that was nice. I have to talk about the puzzles in this game. Although still very simple to complete, Capcom really did add some head scratchers, as some puzzles almost had me look up a guide at certain times during my playthrough. This is a huge and overall great upgrade compared to the overly simple puzzles found in Resident Evil 7, where you basically just had to rotate and match the objects to match the painting in order to solve the puzzle. So big improvement there. The enemy variety in this game compared to Resident Evil 7 is plenty, and this time they attack in herds, and if you're not careful enough can outright flank you and leave you dry on resources if your aiming isn't on point, and things can get pretty intense and suspenseful. Trust, the amount of weapons you obtain is pretty neat, and my favorite is still the shotgun and sniper rifle, as they get the job done. Late into the game, the combat situations can be pretty demanding and tense, as you will find yourself low on ammo and resources needed to craft more ammo on the hardcore difficulty, which is what I would recommend for experienced players, but for the rest, playing on normal will still provide the thrills and challenge, but things will never feel too hard either. I barely got a game over screen unless I was just curious to see how certain death scenes would play out. Now, the weapon variety is pretty neat in this game. You still got the grenade launcher, which can either use explosive rounds or flashbangs. Then there's the M1851 Wolfbane revolver, which uses the same magnum rounds and can make quick work of mini bosses or main bosses as well. You can also use and craft, then set up explosive mine traps which explode when an enemy makes close enough contact to it, which can aid you in controlling hordes of enemy when they all run at you. The F2 rifle feels amazing to use as well when you aim for the head and make heads pop classic Resident Evil style. The widespread shotgun is amazing to use against the horde of enemies as well. The Dragoon assault rifle is also very fun to use, as it can clear out a group of enemies really quickly if need be. And yes, the enemies do move slowly as they creep up on you, only to find yourself getting hit from a long reach attack thinking you are safe. So it is crucial to maintain distance and pop off some lead, then run away and refocus your aim and get that kill count up in order to survive some of the late encounters with the monsters. It is crucial that you use anything in the environment to inflict damage and stay on the move while running and aiming while laying traps in order to survive. In order to survive some of the late enemy encounters, it is crucial that you use anything in the environment to inflict damage and stay on the move, running while aiming and laying traps in order to survive. Just run, then stop, stay calm, aim, and shoot, and craft healing items as well as ammo, and you will survive to see the end and conclusion of Ethan's journey safely. I assure you. Going back to exploring, there are times when you will face off against optional mini-bosses as well, which are very fun to face off against and did provide some challenge, as I did find my resources a bit low when fighting against one specific optional boss halfway through the game. The boss fights in this game were a highlight for me. Even though they are simple in nature, some of them had gimmicks during the boss fights, like summoning acid rain down which makes you run and seek shelter from the said attack, or a boss which can destroy an object you are hiding in, thus taking a bite out of you and tossing you back into the arena. I loved most of the boss fights in this game, and they did feel more epic and grander than some of the boss fights from the other recent Resident Evil games. But I do have to admit that some of the boss fights in this game can also be equally disappointing. One boss just has you play a game of hide and seek, and was just ridiculous and felt lazy, which is a huge disappointment in that regard. Also, another disappointment is that once you learn a boss's pattern, it becomes very easy to dodge and cause damage. So yeah, the boss fights were a bit on the easy side, but for the most part, super fun. While others are entertaining enough from a visual standpoint, with a bit of disappointment mixed in. I have to mention the Duke now, who is basically this game's version of the merchant from Resident Evil 4. His personality really grew on me and shined the more I visited him, and every time I did hear a sneeze or his snoring sounds as I just escaped running from a robotic Frankenstein zombie monster, I found relief and comfort knowing that my buddy is right around the corner somewhere, and I couldn't wait to see what kind of items and upgrades he had in stock for me so that I can trade in some rare hard-earned loot for some extra in-game currency so that I could upgrade the stats of my weapons and buy ammo or items if needed, like briefcases, which added more room in my inventory menu so that I could make room for more weapons and items and bullets that I would gain throughout the game as I explored every nook and cranny within the game, leaving nothing behind, thus feeling no shame or disappointment knowing that I had to leave behind precious shotgun ammo or a healing item because I just didn't have the room. You can also hunt animals Far Cry style, and you can then use the leftover remains when visiting the Duke in order to cook a meal, thus permanently upgrading Ethan's stats like increasing your health or overall movement speed and defense, etc. I have to also include the Mercenaries mode here, which is super fun for those who are looking for more of an arcade action shooter style gameplay. You basically have to take out enemies as efficiently as possible and get high scores for which you will be ranked at the end. Now, in between levels, you will always have a chance to upgrade your weapons or purchase suitable weapons in order to efficiently clear the next zone. Overall, this mode is a blast and I will definitely be playing a lot of it until I get that damn SS rank. After clearing the game, you will unlock a bonus shop as well, which will reward you with completion points, CP for short, depending on how much challenges you completed during your playthrough of the game, and for ranking good in the Mercenaries mode, which you can then use to purchase stronger weapons as well, such as infinite ammo if you upgraded all your weapons to max stats with the addition of adding all of the customizable parts for each weapon. You can also use these CP points to purchase in-game figurines as you view each character model or concept art. Now, let's talk about the presentation and design. I am playing the PlayStation 5 version, and the graphics in this game look amazing, especially when exploring certain in-game areas like dark, barely lit caves or basement dungeons. However, I did notice that sometimes the lip syncing during certain cutscenes didn't match properly to the dialogue or felt a bit off and looked weird. However, for the most part, the cutscenes were done proper and the voice actors did an amazing job.
Hey, do you know anything about what's going on out here?
It doesn't make any sense. Mother Miranda has always
I never really ran into a glitch during my playthrough, and the loading times on the PlayStation 5 were instant, which I appreciate being an older gamer and all. The older you get, the more you realize how valuable your time is, and the faster instant load times for the PlayStation 5 version is very much appreciated. The areas and locations and artwork in this game are very well expertly crafted and believable, and the atmosphere and spooky music did make my heart start beating during certain parts, which really did make this game feel like a Resident Evil game. However, on a negative note, these moments are very short-lived, and as this game isn't trying to be as scary as Resident Evil 7 and some of the older games, I certainly do wish that these freaky scary moments lasted longer and that some enemies could have stalked Ethan faster, as it always felt like I could troll these Mr. X type invincible enemies and run around them and they could never really catch up to me. And if need be, I could just take cover and wait for the enemy to walk right past me so that I could safely sneak or walk towards my desired destination, thus making these scary moments feel less tense and more scripted. Yeah, I would have appreciated if these moments happened more organically, like Mr. X searching and chasing you for the majority of your visit in the Raccoon City Police Department in Resident Evil 2, which added a major threat and roadblock for some players when stuck or trying to complete a puzzle. when Mr. X is hot on your tail. One thing I have to give major props to Capcom for is that the character designs for the main villains in this game are top notch, and each one of them were unique, and I was very well pleased with their in-game dialogue and the way they spoke and interacted with Ethan during cutscenes or during boss fights. Another thing I have to give respect to Capcom for is that they really did make Ethan more of an enjoyable character here. He really did stand out in this game, even more so than in Resident Evil 7, as he had more dialogue and interacted to other characters more normally. When he felt angry or scared and confused, it resonated with me, the player, even more, and overall made me relate to Ethan's character more, as he felt less flat and basic and boring than he did in Resident Evil 7. So that's a good thing. Now, if anyone didn't like Ethan from the last game, then they probably won't enjoy him here either. But honestly, Capcom really did a great job handling Ethan's personality in this game. And at the end of the adventure, he sounded more like a warrior who has survived a lot of messed up shit and is now a battle-hardened warrior. And honestly, he is one of my favorite main characters in this franchise, next to Leon Kennedy. Now, let's talk about some of the flaws.
Looking to fish food.
Although I did previously mention that I did enjoy the overall character designs for the four lords, one thing I do have to mention is that too bad they couldn't stick around for longer during the game, because some parts felt very rushed and felt like they introduced a villain and then 20 minutes later they're already dead on the floor, and you're just like, damn, okay, was that it? I need a minute to process this. Everything happened way too fast. It felt like Resident Evil 3 fast, as in, I'm exploring one section, then 20 minutes later it's over and on to the next part. I would rather explore each part and area for at least 4 to 5 hours, solving puzzles, fighting scary enemies, and running away from tyrant-style monsters. Soak in the environment and then move on to the next area. Like the Metroid Prime games, they do that perfectly. Yeah, I definitely think that they could have made some sections longer and introduced some freaky enemy designs or hype moments with these bosses, and I felt like they should have added more original characters to this game besides the four lords and Chris Redfield that you interact with during certain story segments or in-game cutscenes, especially while exploring new areas, which could have added to the overall dread and lore and atmosphere of this game. And it would have been neat to meet and see how these characters are surviving and fighting, as well as how they are coping, only to end up fighting against the horde of enemies alongside Ethan, only to see them get torn in half or eaten during the next scene. Yeah, I know I have issues, but I think that would have been neat and could have added more value and detail to this overall great gameplay experience. Another flaw is that I think Capcom should have went all out with gadgets and upgrades and weapons, even though what we do get is great. For example, in the Not a Hero DLC in Resident Evil 7, you got the night vision upgrade, which could make you see in the dark and made some encounters with monsters a little bit more intense. I'm just saying, if they could add in robotic enemies with drills for hands, then they could have made some really neat gadgets and upgrades and weapons that would have really made the game more enjoyable and fun. But maybe I'm just nitpicking and expecting way too much. Another flaw is that the game is very short. Like, it took me about 11 hours to beat, and I was deliberately moving slow as a snail. My whole playthrough experience, exploring and finding all the treasures and looting all the houses, definitely increased the playtime by just a bit. I really do hope that the next game will be longer, and look, I understand that horror games are better off shorter because the scare factor does die down, but I mean, this game isn't even that scary, and if the next game is going to be more action heavy like Resident Evil 4 and over the top, then I want a longer experience. If Resident Evil 4 can pull it off and still entertain me no matter how many times I replay that game, then so can Resident Evil 9 or whatever game is next in line for this franchise. Last but not least, even though Capcom did increase the enemy variety, I feel like the enemy variety was still limited, minus the mini bosses, which in my opinion were pretty good. It always felt like I was shooting the same zombies over and over again and surviving against the same pack of Lycans, although maybe one has armor on them, making them harder to kill. And for example, during Salvatore's Moreau section, it would have been cool to fight and face off against mermen or mermaid monsters, as Moreau is a dark take on, and having mermen scary monster creatures or mermaids trying to drain your life force in a scary way would have been neat. So even though the enemy variety is overall more better than Resident Evil 7's, there's still some room for improvement. Speaking of Resident Evil 7, you know what enemy type they should have brought back? The molded creatures. I think including them near the end of the game and also introducing near variants of these creatures would have made an overall positive great impact on the enemy variety and design in this game as well. And I mean, if Evelyn can create the molded, then Mother Miranda should be able to as well. And yeah, I know that the lichens, basically mutants fused with mold and the parasite, apologies if I pronounce this wrong, named the Kadu parasite, but bringing back the molded enemies would have been a nice touch and callback to Resident Evil 7, even though the references to the game are in this game, and I do appreciate that. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Resident Evil 8 Village, though a bit on the short side and lacking in some areas. However, what this game does excel in is in its moments when the game has you exploring creepy, desolate areas mixed in with the creepy atmosphere, accompanied by great villains with great character designs, mixed in with its tense and suspenseful, always in your face, over the top, chaotic, heavy action shooting gameplay, which makes your adrenaline skyrocket thanks to its first person immersive gameplay experience. And I know what you're asking, is it the best Resident Evil game? Well, speaking solely for myself, no, it is not. Is it what I hope and expected it to be? Not really, but I wasn't disappointed with the game either. And it is actually one of the best games I've played so far in 2021. If you are a longtime Resident Evil fan or even a newbie, then this game is well worth the investment and purchase. Now, I would still recommend to wait for a price drop, but if you can't wait, then I wouldn't blame you. You can't go wrong investing your time and money into this game. When it comes to replay value, this game is definitely not lacking, as you still have harder difficulties to conquer on your new Game Plus save file, in which you get to keep all your upgrades and weapons and items you had during your last playthrough, making turning the difficulty up well worth it in return. There's the Village of Shadow mode as well, which mixes up the enemies so you never know what kind of enemy you will run into, and this mode is way harder than all of the other difficulty settings. You also have more weapons to purchase and figurines to collect thanks to the endgame bonus shop, which you can then use CP points you earn through completing endgame challenges or playing through the Mercenaries mode. And yes, Mercenaries mode will have you hooked long after the story mode is completed and finished. As well, for those of you itching to sink your teeth into this game even more and getting the most out of the combat. And yeah, while some sections felt rushed and some of the other sections felt more complex and a joy to get lost in and explore and solve puzzles and find keys or certain key items to open up more of the area like the older games. However, some of the boss encounters felt lazy and rushed compared to the better boss fights in this game, which felt more grander and over the top than most of the other fights compared to the most recent games from this franchise of late. I didn't feel overly disappointed. With all of these factors in mind, I'm giving this game an overall rating of 8.1 out of 10. Thanks for watching, everybody, and congratulations if you made it to the end of this video. I deeply thank you from the bottom of my heart, as I am trying to create the best content that I can, and I hope that this review was enjoyable to watch and sit through, as well as being informative and entertaining. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see more amazing video game reviews, updated weekly. And give this video a thumbs up and hit that notification bell to always get new updates when I upload a new video. Peace out, my spirits. Until the next Roguespirit video game review. Take care and stay safe. Peace out.